Most people believe intelligence is about speed, memory, or words. That belief keeps them predictable, exposed, and easy to manage. Real intelligence operates in levels, and once you see them, you can never unsee where people truly rank. By the end of this, your reactions will slow, your presence will sharpen, and your silence will start doing the work. You won't need to prove intelligence anymore. Others will feel it and adjust. Level 1 intelligence lives entirely in reaction. It is governed by impulse, emotion, and immediate stimulation. At this level, the mind does not pause, it responds. Tone overrides content, provocation overrides logic. Whatever is loudest, newest, or most emotionally charged becomes truth in the moment. This intelligence believes it is thinking, but it is only responding to pressure. People operating here confuse emotion with authenticity. If they feel something strongly, they act on it immediately. Anger becomes speech, excitement becomes promises, fear becomes submission. There is no internal filter, no delay between stimulus and behavior. That delay, the pause, is where power begins, and at this level, it does not exist. Most conflict in the world is driven by this tier. Arguments escalate because neither side can tolerate silence. Offense is taken instantly without examination. Decisions are made to relieve emotional discomfort, not to improve position. These individuals are not weak by nature. They are simply untrained. Their nervous system runs their strategy. Level 1 intelligence is highly predictable. Push the right emotional button, and you control the outcome. Compliment them, and they open up. Criticize them, and they lash out. Pressure them, and they rush. This predictability makes them easy to manage in social, professional, and power dynamics. They believe they are expressive, passionate, or honest, unaware that they are exposed. At this level, identity is fragile. Any challenge feels personal. Disagreement feels like disrespect. Silence feels like rejection. Because the self is unprotected, everything feels like a threat. This is why Level 1 intelligence seeks constant validation and constant noise. Silence forces self-awareness, and self-awareness is uncomfortable here. Information overload thrives at this level. Social media, news cycles, gossip, all are consumed without digestion. The mind jumps from outrage to excitement to anxiety, mistaking stimulation for intelligence. Opinions are adopted quickly and discarded just as fast. There is no ownership of thought, only reaction to influence. This level also mistakes speed for intelligence. Speaking first feels like winning. Responding immediately feels powerful. In reality, it removes leverage. The fastest responder gives away the most information. The first to react reveals priorities, insecurities, and emotional triggers. Power does not rush. What keeps people trapped at this level is not lack of ability, but lack of awareness. They have never questioned their reactions. They believe emotions must be expressed, not managed. They believe silence is weakness, not control. Until this belief breaks, intelligence remains reactive. Level 1 intelligence is unconscious intelligence. It does not observe itself. It does not regulate itself. It does not choose, it responds. And in any hierarchy, the one who responds is always beneath the one who decides. Level 2 intelligence memorizes instead of understanding. It accumulates information, facts, theories, and language, mistaking possession of knowledge for mastery of it. At this level, the mind is organized but not sovereign. Thoughts are stored, not forged. Intelligence becomes a library rather than a weapon. People here speak fluently, often convincingly. They reference books, quote experts, and repeat frameworks with confidence. On the surface, they appear advanced. Beneath that surface, their thinking is borrowed. They rely on external authority to validate their conclusions. When challenged outside familiar material, certainty collapses quickly. This intelligence follows instructions well. It performs in structured environments, exams, institutions, and systems designed to reward recall. But when structure disappears, so does direction. Novel situations expose the limitation memorized intelligence struggles without a script. It waits for permission, for consensus, for proof that someone else has already gone first. At this level, intelligence is obedient. Ideas are accepted based on reputation rather than impact. Contradictions create anxiety, not curiosity. The mind defends what it has learned because it has not yet learned how to think independently. Agreement feels safe. Original thought feels risky. Socially, this level seeks recognition through display. Knowledge is shared to be seen as intelligent, not to influence outcomes. Conversations become demonstrations. Silence feels like invisibility. Yet the more they speak, the more they reveal dependence on external validation. Level 2 intelligence often confuses complexity with depth. Long explanations replace clear positioning. Technical language replaces strategic clarity. They explain what something is, but not when to use it or when to withhold it. Timing remains untrained. What keeps people here is comfort. Memorization feels productive. Repetition feels like progress. But intelligence that cannot adapt is fragile. When the environment shifts, memorized answers lose power. Only those who move beyond storage into synthesis begin to control situations rather than recite them. Level 3 intelligence turns knowledge into performance. At this level, intelligence is no longer about understanding reality, but about winning exchanges. Arguments become the arena and being right becomes identity. The mind sharpens not to see deeper, but to strike faster. Truth is secondary to dominance within conversation. People here are skilled with words. They debate, interrupt, correct, and challenge reflexively. Silence feels like surrender, so they fill it. Every disagreement becomes a contest, every discussion an opportunity to prove superiority. They believe intelligence must be visible to be real. This belief keeps them exposed. This level mistakes verbal control for power. They confuse influence with volume and certainty with speed. In reality, the more they argue, the more they reveal their emotional investment. They show what triggers them, what threatens their self-image, and where their ego is attached. Power never needs to explain itself, and it never needs to win every point. Level 3 intelligence is reactive intelligence with better tools. It still responds to provocation, just more eloquently. When challenged, it escalates. When ignored, it pushes harder. The need to be acknowledged becomes a weakness others can exploit. Strategic silence from an opponent creates discomfort because it denies validation. At this level, intelligence is wasted on friction. Energy is spent correcting others rather than positioning oneself. Arguments rarely change outcomes. They only clarify roles. The one arguing is invested. The one watching is assessing. Hierarchies form quietly while voices compete loudly. This intelligence often believes it is advanced because it can dismantle ideas. But destruction is easier than construction. Critique requires less discipline than restraint. True intelligence knows when not to engage. Level 3 does not yet understand this. What keeps people here is ego attachment. Being right feels like survival. Losing an argument feels like losing status. Until intelligence detaches from identity, it remains trapped in performance. And performance is always for an audience, never for control. Level 4 intelligence withdraws from noise and enters observation. This is where the shift begins. Reaction slows. Speech becomes selective. Attention moves outward rather than forward. Instead of pushing into situations, this intelligence studies them. It watches how people behave when they think no one is measuring. At this level, silence is no longer uncomfortable. It is functional. Silence creates space, and space reveals patterns. Who speaks first? Who fills gaps? Who seeks approval? Who avoids responsibility? These signals are invisible to reactive minds but obvious to an observing one. Observation turns chaos into data. This intelligence understands that behavior is more truthful than language. Words are curated. Actions are instinctive. Tone, timing, posture, and inconsistency speak louder than explanations. Level 4 intelligence listens for what is not said and notices what changes under pressure. People operating here are often underestimated. They do not rush to display insight. They allow others to perform, explain, and expose themselves. This is not passivity, it is positioning. While others compete for attention, the observer gathers leverage. Emotion is present but restrained. Feelings are acknowledged internally, not projected outward. This creates stability. Others sense it without understanding it. Calm becomes unsettling to those who rely on chaos for control. At this level, intelligence separates self from stimulus. Disagreement no longer feels personal. Criticism becomes information. Praise becomes noise. This detachment allows clarity. Decisions are made based on trajectory, not emotion. What makes level 4 rare is patience. Most people cannot tolerate not being seen. They confuse silence with irrelevance. In reality, observation is the doorway to authority. Those who see clearly do not need to announce it. They wait, and the environment adjusts around them. Level 5 intelligence governs the internal state. Emotion is no longer an uncontrolled force but a managed resource. Feelings arise, but they do not dictate behavior. There is a clear separation between what is felt and what is shown. This separation is power. At this level, provocation loses effectiveness. Insults fall flat. Pressure creates focus rather than panic. Praise does not inflate the ego, and criticism does not destabilize identity. Emotional neutrality becomes a strategic advantage. Others react while this intelligence remains still. Control here is not suppression. Emotions are acknowledged, processed, and released privately. What changes is expression. Nothing leaks prematurely. Nothing is given away for free. The face, voice, and posture remain consistent, regardless of internal shifts. This consistency unsettles those who rely on emotional feedback to gauge control. People at this level understand that whoever controls their emotions controls the pace of interaction. Escalation is denied. Urgency is resisted. Decisions are delayed until clarity replaces impulse. Time becomes an ally. This intelligence also recognizes emotional contagion. It avoids absorbing the chaos of others. Boundaries are firm but quiet. Empathy exists without entanglement. Very few reach this level because it requires discipline without recognition. There is no applause for restraint. Yet in every hierarchy, those who remain composed under pressure rise naturally. Emotional control is not visible strength, it is structural strength. Level 6 intelligence understands that timing is the invisible architecture of power. Information, action, and silence are all neutral until released at the right moment. At this level, intelligence no longer rushes toward outcomes. It shapes them by waiting. This intelligence is comfortable with delay. It knows that most people reveal themselves through impatience. When pressured for answers, it pauses. When provoked, it withholds. When opportunity appears, it does not lunge, it evaluates. Others mistake this for hesitation. In reality, it is calibration. Control of timing means knowing when not to respond. Immediate replies surrender leverage. Quick decisions expose priorities. By slowing the tempo, this intelligence forces others to move first, speak more, and show intent. Silence becomes a mirror. People fill it with truth. At this level, intelligence also understands sequence. Saying the right thing too early weakens its effect. Acting too soon creates resistance. Waiting allows conditions to align naturally. When action finally occurs, it feels inevitable rather than aggressive. This intelligence does not chase closure. It allows uncertainty to exist because uncertainty destabilizes those who need resolution. Meetings end without answers. Conversations pause unfinished. Deadlines are stretched strategically. The world bends toward those who are not enslaved by urgency. Emotionally, this level remains stable. Anxiety around missed opportunities disappears because confidence in timing replaces fear. Nothing is forced. Nothing is accidental. What separates this level is trust in restraint. Most people act to relieve discomfort. Level 6 intelligence tolerates discomfort to gain position. When it finally moves, it moves cleanly, decisively, and with minimal resistance. Timing, once mastered, turns patience into dominance. Level 7 intelligence no longer focuses on individuals in isolation. It sees structures, incentives, and feedback loops. People become components of larger systems, not personal mysteries. Behavior is traced back to pressure, reward, and positioning. This perspective removes surprise and replaces it with prediction. At this level, intelligence understands that most actions are not moral choices but systemic responses. People do what the system rewards and avoid what it punishes. Status, money, approval, fear, these forces shape behavior far more than personality. Seeing this dissolves emotional reactions. Nothing feels personal when it is structural. This intelligence studies power flows rather than surface conflicts. Who benefits if this continues? Who loses if it stops? Where resistance will appear? Where compliance is automatic? Decisions are evaluated by second and third-order consequences, not immediate optics. Short-term wins are often rejected in favor of long-term positioning. Level 7 intelligence also understands narratives as systems. What people believe becomes self-reinforcing. Perception shapes behavior. Behavior reinforces perception. To influence outcomes, this intelligence adjusts the narrative environment rather than confronting individuals directly. Subtle shifts create large effects over time. Emotionally, there is distance. Empathy exists, but attachment does not. This allows clarity without cruelty. People are not judged, they are mapped. Once mapped, they are predictable. Once predictable, they are manageable. What makes this level rare is the required ego reduction. To see systems, one must stop seeing oneself as the center. Personal offense dissolves. Personal pride quiets. The intelligence becomes impersonal, precise, and calm. At this level, chaos looks orderly. Confusion looks intentional. Nothing feels random. Those who see systems do not struggle for control, they design environments where control emerges naturally. Elite intelligence understands that visibility is a liability before it is an advantage. Attention attracts scrutiny, resistance, and expectation. The more visible a person becomes, the more predictable they are forced to be. At higher levels of intelligence, freedom matters more than recognition. This intelligence does not confuse silence with absence. It operates quietly, often behind louder figures who absorb attention and blame. Let others speak, posture, and claim credit. Visibility draws attack, obscurity preserves optionality. Those who remain unseen retain the ability to move without interference. At this level, intelligence knows that most people monitor what is obvious. They track the loudest voice, the highest title, the public decision. Meanwhile, real influence happens offstage, in timing, alignment, and access. Elite intelligence positions itself near decision points, not spotlights. Visibility also locks identity. Once people believe they know who you are, they stop updating their perception. This intelligence avoids being fully known. Ambiguity becomes armor. Inconsistent exposure prevents categorization. When others cannot label you, they cannot predict you. Socially, this intelligence speaks when silence would be costly and stays silent when speech would be cheap. It allows others to underestimate competence. Underestimation creates advantage. Overestimation creates resistance. Elite intelligence prefers the former. There is also emotional insulation in invisibility. Public validation is unstable. Public criticism is corrosive. By stepping away from both, this intelligence remains internally stable. Decisions are not distorted by audience reaction. Direction remains intact. This does not mean isolation. Connections exist, but selectively. Information flows inward more than outward. Trust is distributed carefully. Exposure is earned, not given. Most people chase visibility because they seek confirmation of worth. Elite intelligence has already resolved that internally. It does not need to be seen to know it exists. In power dynamics, the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the most noticeable. Unaware intelligence leaks. It speaks too soon, reveals too much, and reacts too openly. It believes transparency is strength, not realizing that exposure is currency. Every unnecessary word becomes information. Every emotional display becomes leverage for someone else. This intelligence confuses expression with authenticity. It feels compelled to explain, justify, and defend. Silence feels risky because it leaves interpretation open. In trying to control perception, it gives others material to work with. The more it talks, the clearer its fears, desires, and limits become. At this level, boundaries are weak. Personal details are shared without strategic reason. Opinions are voiced without understanding the environment. Plans are announced before they are protected. This intelligence seeks connection, validation, or approval, unaware that it is trading power for comfort. Social dynamics expose this most clearly. Unaware intelligence fills gaps in conversation, over-answers questions, and volunteers information no one requested. It believes being open builds trust. In reality, trust is built through consistency and discretion, not disclosure. Emotionally, this intelligence is readable. Facial expressions change instantly. Tone reveals mood. Energy shifts betray insecurity or excitement. Observant individuals do not need to ask questions, they wait and watch. Exposure happens automatically. This level also overshares success and struggle alike. Achievements are broadcast, inviting competition and envy. Struggles are publicized, inviting pity and judgment. Both reduce leverage. What is public can be interfered with. Digital environments amplify this weakness. Posts, comments, opinions, and reactions create a permanent behavioral record. Unaware intelligence documents itself in real time. Patterns become obvious. Positions become fixed. Retreat becomes difficult. What keeps people here is the illusion of control. They believe that by saying more, they can manage how they are seen. In reality, the opposite occurs. The more you reveal, the less control you retain. Others decide what matters. Strength at higher levels comes from selective disclosure, from choosing what remains unseen, from understanding that not every thought deserves expression and not every emotion deserves an audience. Intelligence that cannot withhold cannot protect itself, and what cannot protect itself will always be vulnerable. The highest intelligence manifests as restraint. It is the culmination of all previous levels, where observation, emotional control, timing, and system awareness converge into deliberate inaction. At this level, restraint is not hesitation or indecision, it is power refined. It is the understanding that the strongest move is often the one never made, that the most persuasive influence is the one silently exerted. The world equates action with strength, but true dominance is invisible. It operates in the spaces between movement, in the pauses that define outcomes rather than the gestures that fill time. Those who have reached this intelligence recognize the cost of every word, every gesture, every decision. They understand that disclosure invites counterplay and impulsive action invites resistance. The ability to wait, to withhold, and to do nothing when it seems obvious is the ultimate form of authority. Silence becomes a tool sharper than speech. Patience becomes a weapon, and invisibility becomes leverage. While others react, this intelligence designs the environment. While others compete for attention, it orchestrates consequences without notice. Emotion is perfectly contained. Desire does not dictate behavior. Pride does not compel expression, and fear does not distort judgment. Every impulse is filtered through the lens of long-term strategy. This intelligence is deeply aware of human motivation, not as abstract knowledge, but as applied leverage. Every interaction is read, measured, and anticipated. The observer knows the pressures shaping others' decisions and uses that awareness to create inevitabilities rather than forceful outcomes. Timing and restraint are inseparable. Acting too early diminishes control. Acting too late risks irrelevance. The highest intelligence balances this exquisitely, waiting until conditions align perfectly. Movement is decisive, unavoidable, and subtle. The world interprets action as result rather than cause. By restraining, the intelligent force bends events toward itself, often without anyone realizing the influence has occurred. At this level, systems are understood fully. People, organizations, conversations, and events are patterns to be mapped, anticipated, and positioned around. Interference is minimized. Manipulation is unnecessary because outcomes are guided through natural tendencies and systemic pressures. Influence becomes natural. It is quiet, invisible, and irresistible. Socially, restraint creates authority without announcement. Words are sparse, gestures precise, and presence unassuming yet commanding. Others feel the weight of judgment or expectation without understanding why. Those who lack this intelligence broadcast strength, often inviting opposition. Those who have mastered restraint exert power quietly, with a force that is difficult to resist because it leaves no foothold for attack. Restraint also requires ego dissolution. The need for recognition, validation, or or applause has been neutralized. Achievement is measured in position stability and long-term effect rather than attention or approval. The intelligent observer does not seek followers. It becomes the pivot around which influence naturally circulates. Mistakes are minimized because every move is deliberate. Leverage is preserved because nothing is exposed unnecessarily. Opportunities expand because timing is controlled and reactions are anticipated rather than provoked. The highest intelligence avoids chaos while shaping it simultaneously, orchestrating results without appearing to interfere. Restraint demands patience, endurance, and unwavering self-mastery. It is not the absence of action but the mastery of choice. Every action that occurs is multiplied in effect because it is timed, measured, and calculated. In contrast, impulsive action dissipates energy, reveals vulnerability, and invites resistance. The restrained mind conserves power, waits for alignment, and strikes with quiet inevitability. At its core, this intelligence reframes strength. It teaches that the world is not dominated through volume or visibility, but through control of self, timing, and environment. Those who master restraint operate above the fray, guiding outcomes without participating in noise. While the unrestrained are busy proving themselves, restrained intelligence quietly decides what matters, what will occur, and who will prevail. The final truth of restraint is that power is most absolute when it appears effortless, when influence is invisible, and when action is guided by calculation rather than compulsion. Silence becomes authority, patience becomes dominance, observation becomes inevitability. And in that quiet control lies the ultimate separation between those who act to survive and those who act to shape reality itself. If this sharpened your awareness, like the video and subscribe, not for motivation, but for precision. Final truth. The world is divided not by smart and stupid, but by those who react and those who decide. Sit with that.